it's fantastic that we should have, as my sporting memories guest, perhaps the most famous referee of all time. Ed Morrison always struck us commentators as one of the happiest on the circuit. Firm but fair, but with an instinctive feel for the game and a great rapport with the players. Not afraid to give a stern talking to when needed, and not afraid to share a joke, as in the World Cup final in 1995 with Joos van der Westhuizen, and on hanging up his whistle, dedicated to sharing his knowledge and expertise. An award from rugby's governing body, the IRB, and an OBE, the deserved recognition for a man at the centre of the Nelson Mandela World Cup final that so transcended the sport to become a significant event in the history of our time. So it's great to be able to welcome Ed Morrison to our show today. Thanks, Ed, so much for coming to join us. Let's take you, we're going to talk about Nelson Mandela and that final later, but let's take you back first of all to the beginning. Why rugby? How did you get involved?
To be honest with you, Ali, through school, I've always been mad keen sportsman. When I was very, very young, primary school, cricket and soccer were the main sports, and I loved them both, and still do, by the way. And obviously, moving up to senior school, you may remember him, but our PE master at school was a guy called Len Davis, who was a back row forward for Bristol in the 60s, early 60s. And Len had a massive influence on me. Unfortunately, he passed on a couple of years ago. But I used to meet him at some of the Bristol players' bashes at the Memorial Ground before we moved to the Gate. So Len had a massive influence on me and was really encouraging. And rugby became my first love, followed by soccer and cricket in equal measure. That's where it started, really. So everybody can blame the late Len Davis, but speak highly of him, please.
Absolutely. So what position were you?
Believe it or not, I started as a hooker. I was about 3 foot tall and about 4 stone dripping wet. And I gradually moved back into the back row and then came to my senses and moved back into halfback. It's number 10. And I didn't set the world on light, Ali, I can assure you. I didn't set the world alight. But I enjoyed it.
Well, just listening to you and talking to you brings back fantastic memories of my time in Bristol, that lovely Bristolian accent. And we're talking about a city that has a very special relationship with rugby, doesn't it?
It sure does, Alastair. Yeah, as you well know. And I remember watching you as well, by the way, when you were a young man. And let me tell you, and I've told you this before, I always believed that you should have stayed at scrum half and not moved back to fullback. But what do I know? What do I know? But yeah, it is very much, as you know, a rugby city. Unfortunately, at this present moment in time, and history tells us our soccer clubs are not necessarily quite so successful. But I mean, Bristol, as you know, has got a rich history, and the 60s, of course. And I watched my first game at Bristol in October 1963 in the John Blake era, when no one was allowed to kick the ball apart from kickoffs. I used to find it just fast. I didn't understand anything, of course, and I still don't. I don't think, but I found it fascinating to watch these big guys running around and just moving the ball about. And I think that's where it all started for me, really. And that was a great time. And it's a game that you never stop learning. And even today, we're all learning as the game changes and unfolds and moves on, and as it will and has to.
Yeah, but Bristol in those days, when I joined, were almost unique. There was a Goldster combination as well, but the Bristol combination was a very special breeding ground for players, and also an extremely tough competition in itself, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yeah. And North Gloucester, as you know, are never very welcoming, are they? But I mean, they very similar mentality to Bristol. Really, is that very strong combinations where most rugby players playing in Bristol or Gloucester, you know, they really their ambition was to play for the city. And as you well know, numerous players came through the combination through the junior clubs in there. I think to date there's 44 clubs in the Bristol and district area. So you know, Bristol were lucky that had a reasonable choice of talent in numerous local people went on to play international rugby like you, Alastair.
And your club was Bristol Harlequins. Explain how you started with them.
Well, it's a bit of a story, really, but I actually joined my old boys club, which was the infamous Hartcliffe School. I'm an ex Hartcliffe boy, and I started playing for the old boys, and unfortunately, everybody was about 20 years old and younger, and nobody had the experience of running a rugby club or could manage a rugby club. It faded after a couple of years, which was a shame, really, because there were quite a few talented players apart from myself, of course. But so I decided with a few other guys to move over to Quins, who played at Hen Grove at the time, and I joined them. And obviously, you know, we talked about Peter Sams before. Pete Sams was captain when I moved over in 71 or 72. And the club had a very successful period in the 70s. Not quite so now, but hopefully in the future they'll regain their position. So, you know, that's where I came from. And obviously I never reached the heights of Pete Sams or any of the other guys in the club. So
Well, explain how you got into refereeing then.
Injury, to be honest with you. I did my ACL when I was about 26, 27, and I was advised not to play again. And as I normally do, I ignored the advice and ended up breaking quite a few other bones as well. But this is a true story. Beginning of the 1980 season, on the first game of the season, I was playing. And at 3:05, I broke my jaw in two places. Pure accident, I think. And I was wired up. My teeth were wired up for 6 weeks, so I could eat. All I could do was eat liquidized food. That was never very big anyway, Alastair, and I became much smaller for those 6 weeks. And my twins were just born at that stage, and I just thought, I think this might be telling me something to get out. So I coached for a year at the club. Actually, we got relegated, so that was a bit of a disaster for me anyway. But you'll probably remember Mike Morgan, the referee.
Yeah.
And marathon runner and cyclist and God knows what else. Bowls player now, that's right. Mike said to me, you know, you're not enjoying this, are you? And I said, not one bit. I just did not. I missed being on the field. I missed the competitive nature of it, I suppose. And he said, well, think about going refereeing. And I joined the society in 1982, Bristol Society. And that's where it started. I had no ambition when I started because I didn't understand it. But I was very fortunate for somehow or another to work my way through the system and end up where I ended up.
Do you remember those early games when your first game, when you not being a player, but you have the referee and you have to direct the whole game? Do you remember those early games? What do you remember?
Like it was yesterday. I get reminded. There's a guy from North Bristol Rugby Club, Mike Cotton, and the game was all Bristolians thirds against North Bristol thirds up on Fayland, up on the school ground. And I remember it was the first Saturday of the season. It was very warm, beautiful afternoon, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And the players just helped me through it, really. But the thing that really stuck in my mind was how graceful the players were. I think they had total sympathy for me. And in the bar after, plenty of people wanted to buy me a beer and that. And I thought, I'm in heaven here. This is it. I've made it. And so it went on. And it's like, it's true what they say, Ali. Sometimes you learn the hard way. And certainly in the refereeing world, you do learn the hard way. And the sooner you get the hard lessons over with, the better it is and the more enjoyable it is. Even though I didn't know what I was doing that day, I really enjoyed it just because I felt part of a game.
Yeah.
I'm a very poor individual sportsman.
Yeah.
How difficult
did you find it though to lay down the law, having been, as it were, on the other side of it as a player, needing to be told things by the referee? How difficult did you find it to be the one that says, do this, don't do that, etc.?
Yeah, I suppose in a way I've always been a bit of a bossy sort, and I found that bit quite easy when I thought I knew what I was doing. The difficulty comes when you haven't got a clue what you're doing. But what I did, in actual fact, I didn't go into it blind, actually, Alastair, because the year after I broke my jaw, I actually joined the society in a non-active way. But what I did was we went to all the training sessions, and at the time Bristol had a referee that you might remember called Keith Baber, and Keith was, he was the strictest master I've ever had, and I went to school then. I mean, the training was absolutely phenomenal, and it really was. And I think without Keith's influence at that stage, I wouldn't have had a clue really, and I don't know how long I would have gone on, but I felt reasonably confident that I knew something about the game, and I think that helped.
And when did you feel you were any good at it, at the refereeing?
Oh, a long time after that, I think.
You started getting promoted.
Yeah, I think people, to be honest with you, I was quite ignorant about it. I just wanted to, whether I was doing Keynsham Force or whoever's St. Bernadette's Force, I was quite happy because it was sociable, and it was challenging because you only got to look at the game today at the highest level. I mean, it's not an easy job, if people could find some pleasure somewhere else, I'm sure they'd go there. But I suppose people give you confidence, don't they? And the feedback I was getting was reasonably positive. But I did have my down days. There's no doubt about that. It's a bit like a cricketer when he goes through a run of where he can't put bat to ball, and we all learn the hard way. We have our good days and we have our bad days. But I mean, the skill of it really is when you do have a bad day, which everybody has, that you can put that behind you and spur you on not to have another bad day. 2 bad days on the run, you're in trouble, I think, in this business.
So appointments started with the local societies, the Bristol Society or whatever.
Yeah.
When did they start moving out of that sphere?
I think within about a year, actually. I think the chairman at the time was a guy called Ray Plummer, who unfortunately is another one who's passed on, and he's one of the Plummers dynasty from Penryn, and he was a bank manager in Westbury-on-Trim, was Ray. And he felt I had something about me. I don't know why, but I knew I was very lucky because when I was captain at Queen's, Ali, you get to know the referees quite well, and you tend to mix with them and talk to them and learn things from them. And Ray took a little bit of a shine to me. And next thing I knew, I was going out on exchanges to various parts of the country, as you do in the system, where people from outside the society assess you and report on you, etc., etc. So I moved pretty quickly, to be honest with you. within a few years. And again, not really knowing where I was going, if I'm honest with you, but I enjoyed refereeing in Bristol immensely. Always have done. But it was nice to go visit places I'd never heard of, to be honest with you. And I think I had a distinct advantage that none of them could understand me, so they didn't take any notice of me, really.
I remember playing in the 70s, and we were always aware when there was an assessor in the stands. You know, the referees had to be on either their best or their worst behaviour, depending on which way you looked at it. How was it for a referee to know that this particular performance was being assessed by somebody in the stands who was going to mark you up and down, and therefore have influence over your refereeing career?
It's an interesting point, actually, because I can remember when you get up to the ladder and you're around the international stage, you would be aware that 3 or 4 of the international selectors would be at a game.
Yeah.
And you really, really do have to try and put that at the back of your mind, because at the end of the day, I think if I had one strength, my only one strength was that I wanted a referee for the players and not necessarily even for the crowd. I just wanted the players to enjoy what they were doing, because I felt if they were enjoying it, there's a good chance that I'd be enjoying it as well. So I was quite fortunate that I'm not aware that I ever was overly influenced by that. I would be after the game in terms of what they felt, and we had some pretty impressive guys who would have refereed you, Ali. You know, Peter Brook, Alan Wellesby, Ken Patterson, like that, who were international referees in their own right. It's normally pretty sound advice. So no, I don't think I was unduly concerned about them. I have to say, when I decided to retire and in 2000 and said, look, I'm going to have one more season and that's it, I didn't even think about. I don't think I read a report after that, to be honest with you. You know, I just wasn't interested. I just knew I was going to finish in a few months' time, and I was going to make the most of it and enjoy it as much as I possibly could, which I did.
How did you get selected to be on the international panel?
Well, again, they were very good. I mean, they still are the RFU. I think they're the leaders in world refereeing in terms of the processes they use and the systems they have in place. And that can be justified by seeing 4 referees at the World Cup at this present moment in time, which is tremendous. But just by, and also I think word of mouth has a lot to do with it as well. People talk to people. You know, there are a lot of influential people on the club circuit, in the senior club circuit in England, and they talk to people. Tom Money, for instance, was always very supportive of me for some reason, you know, and I'm sure Tom would have spoke to somebody who spoke to someone else who spoke to someone else. But no one was more surprised than me when I sort of moved up to that level, really. That was a real shock for me. I didn't know it was coming. Purely because I didn't really take any notice of the reports, and to some degree, you didn't even see the reports. No one spoke to you. You just got on with what, and you recognise where you. It's a bit like you playing, Ali. No different at all, really. You know, if you're selected for the first team, you know, and then you're selected for the county in your day, there's a chance you might be moving up the ladder a little bit. And if someone then selects you for one of the England trials, you've got a bit of a chance of having a go at it. And it's very similar in a way to refereeing, really. You know, if you're refereeing Bath against Gloucester, you know someone thinks you're quite capable. If you're refereeing Bath's third team against Gloucester's third team, maybe not so much. But it is. They're all steps along the way, and it does get tough at times. You know, as you move on You know, I've been a great believer when I watch referees now that I never gauge an opinion on one-offs. I always like to see people a couple of times. You know, if every cricketer got a duck on their first senior game and got dropped, which England used to do quite regularly, you know, you go nowhere really. So, you know, I think you need to have a good look at someone. If you believe they're capable of operating at that level, give them a run, give them a chance. I never like one-offs, and I think rugby is a great example. The number of people, there's a lot of one-cap rugby players around, Ali, which it's a bit unfortunate in my opinion.
So when you were given your first international match to referee, presumably you remember it well, and the circumstances under which you were selected. Talk us through it.
Well, basically what happened was in that period of time when I was coming up through the system, England had what they call an international panel of 3 referees. In your day, it would have been Roger Quinton, Fred Howard, Laurie Prideaux, people like that. And there was a wind of change come around. You know, Roger wasn't getting any younger, and Laurie, I think, was in the same boat. And they decided to do something outlandish, which was to select 5 referees. And I, out of the blue, for some reason, I was selected along with spreaders. Tony Spreadbury, who you would know well. And Tony was a lot more experienced than me, although he was a lot younger. He was a lot more experienced because he'd refereed since he was in his nappies. And I don't know, I must have been about 36 by then. In today's game, I'd be an all-timer, I suppose. So you get a call to say you're in the 5. That was it. And that was about 1989, I think, but I didn't get first international game till 91, 5 Nations, because for us in those days it was all about 5 Nations, about 5 Nations. You know, you didn't think, I didn't think about going to, you know, I'll go down to Australia and do a Bledisloe or, you know, something like that. I never give that a thought. It was just blinkered for 5 Nations. And that was in January 91 in Paris. Yeah, it was quite good fun. I watched most of it. I took that whole adage with me as well. I'll just do what the players tell me. It was much easier. So Bebegier was scrum half for France, and he rode me through it. But
again.
Scotland, yes. Scotland were very strong at that time, actually. Very, very strong. You know, when the Hastings boys and Ian Milne, he's the biggest man I've ever seen, Ian Milne. He's about 3 foot tall and about 10 foot wide. I mean, he's incredible. But they were a very, very good side under Ian McGeechan when he was with Jim Telford. And I ended up refereeing Scotland quite a few occasions in the 90s for some reason, but that was a great experience. I've got to be honest. I mean, I literally didn't know what I was doing. I mean, it was so quick. It was unbelievable. That's why I reference the fact that one-offs, they're dangerous, because you need to become accustomed to how quickly you've got to think. It's not necessarily how fast you can run. It's how fast you can think. And that was a massive learning curve for me that day. Massive learning curve.
And this, of course, is still the amateur days. So
absolutely.
You were holding down a job whilst refereeing at the weekends and preparing for all these big games. How were you managing to balance the two?
With difficulty, really, to be honest with you, with great difficulty. I worked out at British Aerospace there. I was there for about 20 plus years. And it did get difficult, very difficult, because I was paid from the moment I got to work and the moment I went home from work. I was paid by the minute. So if I wasn't there, unfortunately, the pennies weren't there either. And incidentally, on that first game, you have to buy your own kit to referee in as well.
Really?
Yeah. but you didn't get a shirt like the players or anything like that.
And make
But
your
you
own
didn't
way?
worry about that. Sorry?
And make your own way there, or do they lay on some sort of transport?
Oh no, you make your way there, and it's you claim your airfare and stuff like that from them. But I mean, once you hit Paris, as soon as you arrive in Paris, someone meets you, takes you out to dinner, etc., etc., etc. And I had that guardian angel, Chris Hewitt, with me at the time. He was out in Bristol. He was out at Bristol Airport to send me on my way. He was hoping he'd never see me again, to be honest with you.
Dangerous man to have as your guardian angel. Anyway, so that first game, you sort of talked about the pace of it. Did you then feel, right, I've got the taste of it, I can do this? International rugby is
I didn't actually. I thought it might be beyond me, and I was incredibly. It was the year of the World Cup was being hosted in over here in '91, as you well know, and
yeah.
I thought, well, I'm probably going to be one of the one cap wonders, etc., etc. And then I had a phone call to say to go to Romania in the July and referee Romania and France. And my guardian angel that day was John Reeson, who you know as well as rugby correspondent. And that the heat over there at that time of year, the humidity is phenomenal. And I refereed that game, and I got to be honest with you, I felt a lot happier in myself.
Yeah.
In terms of being, there's nothing that could prepare you for your first international, probably as a player or as a referee. There's nothing to prepare you. You've got to do it and ride the waves and hope that you come out in one piece. And after the July in Romania, I felt a lot more comfortable with myself in terms of coping and dealing with it. And of course, none of us knew, but the selectors were going to select 2 referees for the first World Cup in '91, which was started in September or late September. And I never even dreamt of that, to be honest with you. So when I had a phone call to say, everybody else is dead and you got to go and replace them, I upped on the train, went to Cardiff, and 6 weeks later I had to go back to work, which was a crying shame.
So during a World Cup, you basically are kept together as the referees, or you work in pairs or threes, or how does it work?
We were based in Cardiff actually, and you would go. Everybody would just go out to their various games, and it was teams of 3 in those days. There's no bunkers or TMOs or anything like that in those days. And you would go out to your games, and I was up in Edinburgh. I was in Dublin for 2 or 3 weekends, which is hard work, as you well know. But that was a wonderful experience. So I mean, along with Derek Bevan and Stephen Illich, Owen Doyle, Jim Flem, people like that. It was a great, absolute massive learning curve for me, massive learning curve, and we had some fun as well. And it was the amateur days, Iggy, when you could go out and have a drink, and no one really worried about you or wanted to know you really, which was brilliant. But that was a great experience. That was hard work going back to work though. Oh.
Yeah. And 91 to 95, then you're an established international referee. When the 95 World Cup comes along, you must have felt very, very confident and capable and able to take anything that even a tournament in South Africa could throw at you.
I would say that what I would say is between 91 and 93, you grow into it, you grow into the role. And the other thing is people get to know you as well, players particularly and coaches. I mean, Ian McGeechan, just mentioning Ian, he was very supportive of me, very, usually very complimentary, even when he lost. And he lost that game in Paris, by the way. Very supportive. So but I picked up a nasty injury in '93, I think it was. I really had Richard Cockrell stood on my foot when I went to go one way, and he went the other way, and he won, and I lost. And I smashed my ankle up in Northampton, and I thought that was going to be curtains for me. In those days, there was no physiotherapy or no treatment. You were just go and buy it yourself, and I wasn't in a position where I could afford to do that with three youngsters. So yeah, that was a pretty difficult time, and it took me a long time to get back. And I always remember Rory Underwood was very good to me. He because the ligaments were so badly damaged, he sent me a little support boot that he had that he said he'd injured his ligaments, and it would help me, and that was a great help. And I've always liked Rory anyway, but I liked him even more after that. But so that they were the years, and also I went down to my first Bledisloe was in '93, in the summer of '93, and I went down, and that was a massive learning curve as well. But believe it or not, Alastair, I found refereeing in the Southern Hemisphere slightly easier.
Right.
Slightly easier. One, because I think obviously I had more nous about what was going on, and I think secondly the fact that the attitude's slightly different down under there. They do tend to move around a little, move the ball around a lot more. So that was a great one. And my first Bledisloe was when George Gregan made that tackle on Jeff Wilson in the corner, when they would have won the game. So that was when I started to grow. I think my confidence started to grow. So I went to the World Cup in '95 with one ambition. I wanted to referee a pool game. I never thought anything more than that. I just wanted to referee a pool game. And obviously, when I got selected for the quarterfinal, I was over the moon with that. And I thought, right, that's me over with. You can go on holiday now and join some more meat, eat some more red meat, and drink some more red wine, and all the rest of it. But I mean, you were there and working as we recall, and it was an interesting because what used to happen is that the appointments would be made on a Monday. So early Monday morning, you get a phone call, say, team meeting at 7 o'clock, or stupid 7:30. Derek Bevan would just be coming in from the night out and things like that. We'd go straight to the meeting, and they say, these are the appointments for the quarterfinal, right? Following Monday, these are the appointments for the semi-final. And there were two people who weren't selected to go to any game. And that was me, and you'll probably remember it's David Bishop from New Zealand, who was vastly more experienced than me. And there's no doubt that if England would have beaten New Zealand that day, that David Bishop would have done the final. Not only because of neutrality, but because he was more senior. And obviously, when New Zealand beat England that day, you begin. Everybody was saying to me, "Oh, you're going to do the final now." I still didn't believe it really. So 7 o'clock meeting, and that's when they announced the two referees for the final, and the third place game that no one wants to go to, no one wants to be involved in. I went to that game when England played France in Pretoria. It's probably the worst international game of rugby I've ever seen in my life. You remember it well.
Nobody wanted to win it.
It was awful, wasn't it? It was awful. I wanted to go home at half time as well, along with everybody else. But yeah, then we get to the final, obviously on the Saturday. So I mean, one of the nicest things in the RFU, sometimes take a lot of stick, but I had a phone call on Thursday to say they were going to fly my wife out for the game, which was a great. I'll never forget that. It's a great gesture. Great gesture.
Yeah. So you've got all week to prepare for the World Cup final. It's New Zealand against South Africa, the home nation, and we were sort of all in our little bubbles. I was in my TV, but you did get a sense of how important it was, not just as a rugby occasion, but as a national occasion. Did you feel that as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are lots of things going on in those few weeks in South Africa. Ali, you'll recall all the talk about Kerry Packer circus being coming into being with all the players going professional and everything else. And if you believe what some people say, it was very close to actually coming off, and it didn't. But the main the big headline news was Nelson Mandela, of course, as we all know. And I mean, if there's a God, the timing was perfect, wasn't it, for South Africa? There's no doubt it had a massive influence on bringing that country together. When I first went to South Africa, I mean this in the nicest way, you'd look around the crowd and you wouldn't see many black faces. I remember we had to get to the ground at some stupid time before the game because of the crowds.
Yeah.
And I remember walking around the pitch before the game, and there were numerous, many black faces, which was a wonderful sort of sign, really, that some progress had been made in South Africa. And as you would know better than me, I mean, Nelson Mandela was very smart, very clever, very wise, and he milked it. He milked it and he milked it and he milked it. But I have to say, and I'll be honest with you, that I never thought South Africa would beat New Zealand.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. You've presumably refereed both sides earlier in the competition. You've refereed.
I refereed New Zealand in the first round, against Wales.
Do you go in with preconceptions about certain players or certain ways in which they do certain things, or do you have to try and give yourself a blank slate?
No, I mean, if you don't do your homework, I think you're foolish.
Yeah.
I mean, they do their homework on me.
Yes.
Or whoever's in the middle. So yeah, you mentally you do your notes. I mean, I was a big fan of Sean Fitzpatrick. I like a captain who's a captain. I mean, those days are gone now. The captain has no influence, really, does he?
Flashing light in the stand now, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I like Sean Fitzpatrick, because if you said to Sean Fitzpatrick, whether he agreed with it or not, he knew he had to keep you on board, so he would run along with it. And interestingly enough, I had a good relationship with Francois Pignon as well, because I refereed his first ever international when he was made captain on his debut, as you well know. Yeah. So I had a good rapport. I mean, they don't agree with everything you do, and that's only natural. But what they were two leaders. So that makes a big difference to a side, a big difference. When Sean Fitzpatrick said something to his side, and if he said jump, they'd all say, "How high do you want me to jump, Sean?" He had that kind of influence. And that makes our roles slightly easier. So I had confidence in both sides, actually. Obviously, what I wasn't aware of was that New Zealand were feeling a little bit unwell.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. It was Susie, the waitress, and the food poisoning. You didn't know about that? We didn't.
No, the only thing I recall, I think it was the first scrum of the game, how a few of the players' sweat was just pouring off of them.
Right.
And I thought, oh, there's me, lovely, and
well groomed as always.
Had my hair done and all that. No, I mean, it didn't dawn on me. It wasn't until after Sean Fitzpatrick had come out to me and said, "Are you aware that we had a lot of players feeling unwell. I said, no, no, I wasn't. But I mean, you were there.
Yeah.
It was going to happen, wasn't it? It had to happen for South Africa. It just
Yeah.
had to happen.
Yeah.
It was just fate. It was, the sun. Everybody was looking down on them, and when you look back on it, I'm so pleased it did happen, because I think it helped the nation sort of come together. I mean, everybody has their problems. Every country has their problems, but it certainly helped the situation in South Africa for sure.
And meeting Nelson Mandela beforehand, that was. Do you
We
remember?
met him in the week, actually, Ali.
Yeah.
Met him in the week. Yeah, we had one of the referees at the World Cup. Again, unfortunately, he's passed on. Was a guy called Keith Rogers. He spoke most perfect English.
Right.
Most unlike me, perfect English, and he had influence where influence mattered, and so he dragged a few of us along to meet Nelson Mandela. So we went along and met him then in the week, and then obviously you meet him in the game, before the game as well. But I mean, that was the longest 10 minutes of my life before the game. By the time you had the presentations, the anthems, the haka. I was knackered then. I really was.
Did you really ask Nelson Mandela whether he was wearing a dress?
With that shirt he had on. Yeah. Perfect. I miss so much of all that, you see. I didn't know nothing about the planes going over. And I didn't know that Nelson Mandela was going to come down. Well, the tunnel at Joburg. I mean, it's you've got to be very careful when you walk down onto the pitch in Ellis Park. I didn't. No one said to me, "Oh, by the way, there's going to be this, that, and everything else." I suppose I was just so focused on, what I had to attempt to do. But it was interesting, to say the least, wasn't it?
And an incredible thing not an incredible thing. It was such a moment in history that they've made a film about it. The Invictus film. Presumably you've seen Invictus with Matt Damon.
Yeah, I don't know how, but I don't know why. I got an invite to the final, the premiere. Sorry, we went up to London and watched the premiere. I enjoyed all the circus around it, but I thought it could have been done a lot better. I mean, the play inside of it was just acting, wasn't it? That wasn't real. But I'm funny, right? We sat, the pair of us sat down and watched it in Clint Eastwood, and the top people were all sat by the side of them. And they all made a little speech before we seen the premiere, and away we went.
Did they discuss with you who should play your part?
No, but I know the guy who advised them. It's a guy, an American called Jack Clark, who actually played for the Barbarians.
Right.
He was a former NFL player, one of the biggest men.
Yeah.
He had muscles, right? I didn't know muscles existed. He was huge.
Yeah.
He was absolutely ginormous. So he was in charge of the technical side of that. Yeah, I think there was about 1 second where you could see when there was a kickoff, and I was in it. Yeah, I'm still waiting for the royalties, by the way, Ali.
Well, you might be waiting. But as you mentioned earlier, I mean, it was a fantastic final, fantastic occasion. But immediately after it, the game went professional. How did that affect the referees?
It didn't for a few years, to be honest with you, Alastair. We didn't go professional until, well, I was the first professional referee in the Northern Hemisphere in '99. So there was quite a gap. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fairness to Australia and New Zealand, they picked up the baton straight away, and they made their senior referees professional, and it caused quite a stir, to be honest with you, because when we were going down in 93, 94, 95, 96, until we became professional, they really did not like the fact that amateur referees were going down to referee their Bledisloe Cups at senior internationals, where everybody had been professional for a number of years. But in fairness, the RFU did catch up very quickly.
Yeah, but you mentioned the time when you were an amateur and you lost money when you went to referee an international.
Oh, absolutely.
You must have been reasonably happy that now at least you're getting paid for your trouble.
Well, it was interesting. It just didn't feel comfortable with me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
At the beginning, and funny enough, I was coming home from a Five Nations game in Italy, and Stephen Jones. I don't know how he was aware, probably through you, I expect. He was aware that I wasn't accepting the fees, which is, when I look back on it, is absolutely ridiculous. And he looked up to me. He said, "You owe that to your family."
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. That always stuck with me.
Mm.
And it wasn't until sort of '97 I accepted the match fee, which wasn't much, to be honest with you, but it was something. It was something. But the real reason why I wanted to, I was keen to become full time, was because I knew it would elongate my career a little bit, because by then I was way past the 40, and I think I was just under 50 when I retired.
Right.
Which is pretty old, really. As you could tell looking at me now, but it did give me 2 or 3 years where I could get looked after better, manage training and eat well and stuff like that.
Has it changed the referee's body to now be professional? Has it altered in any way, or is it the same enthusiasm, motivation that you have to take charge of a game, to referee and so on, or has professionalism changed?
I think there's always you always need motivation, whether you're a player, or you always want to better yourself, don't you? In whatever you're doing, and that's no different now. The difference now is that if you looked at 90% or 99% of referees in the past, they all came into refereeing when they were broken.
Yeah.
Wayne Barnes started when he was 14. Tony Spretbury, because of injury, started when he was 14. So, they now got, people are coming in at a very early age and saying, "I don't want to play this silly game. I might get hurt or broken. I'm going to go refereeing." And also coupled with that, you've now got, the RFU is an example. Of got tremendous sports science advisor who's a brilliant lass. I actually interviewed her on the advice of Simon Kent, the doctor at Twickenham. She was with Tottenham Hotspur at the time, fitness and conditioning coach. Alex Reed, her name is, and I was told I had to interview 3 people, and I said no, I'm only interviewing 1, and I interviewed her, and she's still there today, 12 years, 13 years on, and the fitness levels of those guys you would not believe. They are athletes in their own right.
Yeah, and the intellectual side of it as well is catered for. Isn't there a referees academy in Gloucestershire? Isn't Chris White running?
Yeah. Chris, I was with Chris on Friday at the Cheltenham Literary Festival, and Chris is an out-and-out teacher. He's a coach. That's what he loves doing. He loves educating people, and Matt Carley's come through that. Christoph Ridley, who's the next big one off the block. Christoph's come through that process. So Chris is very, very important to that, to the RFU in that role at the moment. And I think there's a conveyor belt of people who want to jump on it. How far they run or get along the conveyor belt, we don't know. But there's some very, very, very good young referees around at the moment. No question about that.
And what about the science of refereeing? You were talking earlier about how quickly you need to think to be on top of things and to react. Is that getting more difficult with the invasion of television and instant replays and all this comment about referees? Is it getting more difficult to make
I think, yeah, it's quite interesting. If you looked at if you looked at the World Cup at the moment, with the system that's being used just purely at the World Cup, particularly with the bunker situation, I mean, the last thing you want to do in the game is send a player off the field. And it's, you know, what they've got now is they've got a process now where they can say, I'm not sure whether that's worth a yellow or, you know, or red. I'll give them a yellow. The team's still reduced to 14 players. Let someone have 8 minutes to look at that and advise me on whether they think that is a definite red or a yellow. And I got to be honest with you, I think that's taken a massive, massive weight off the shoulders of the actual guy in the middle. And I think it's significant as well. Significant. Because, you know, we've all, no one wants to send a player off, but when you do send one off, you say to yourself, "Oh, I got this right," for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So it is helpful, and you know, the TMO is helpful as well, Ali. You know, I would imagine we've all given tries that weren't tries. We've disallowed tries that were tries. You know, when you've got piles of bodies underneath. Yeah. So if you can go upstairs and you can get some advice and some help on that, it can only be helpful. And at the end of the day, it is these guys' livelihoods. Yeah. You know, so I have no problem with that at all. The one thing that speeds the mind up is the speed of the game. The ball's in play a lot longer now, so it means your concentration levels are going to be better, which would have been my weakness.
Surely not. But looking at some of the games now, there are so many replays, so many stop starts, so many times when it is referred to another camera. But the bottom ignorant line for me is that you're referring it to another human being to make another human type decision, and you can get to situations where, you know, it's my decision. I'm on the field of play, and I've got a feeling of what the players are like. Is that different to somebody's any better or worse than somebody's decision who's in a bunker somewhere in a city hundreds of miles away?
I think we're in danger of falling into a bit of a trap at the moment, Ali, in terms of allowing technology to run the game.
Yeah,
and I think there has to be a balance. And I think, you know, taking soccer, if you looked at the problems soccer's have with VAR,
you
know, there's nothing wrong with the system, but human nature is human nature. People will, from time to time, get some things wrong. And that's inevitable. One of the problems when you introduce these levels of technology is everybody thinks it's 100% foolproof. But you're still dealing with human beings, so you have to accept that. I mean, the challenge when I was around was making the decisions. That's what woke me up in the morning. You know, I wanted to challenge myself to see whether I could do it or whether I couldn't do it. But the game's much quicker now, so I appreciate that. You know, there's times. I mean, when I first started, you would have remembered John Biggood up at Bristol Ground who ran the touch.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, each club supplied a club person.
Yeah.
They had no authority. All they did was put their flag up if the ball went in touch. That was it.
Yeah.
The guys were on their own. And in some respects, the game, when you know, with all due respect, when you were playing, was a lot more difficult in terms of some of the control and behavior of players.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that professional players have done now, they know it's their livelihoods. They have to be very careful and draw the line where they go.
Yeah.
Whereas you would have seen some things you wouldn't want to publicize in the game, like I would not want to. So there's twos and fro's from it, but I mean, at the end of the day, I do worry slightly about the technology side of it. I think there's I just don't. We've got to get the balance right somehow or another. And one of the beauties of our sport, I always remember when Len Davis said to me once, he said, "Never question a referee."
The referee's always right, even if he's wrong.
And he said, "If you can help it, never speak to one." That was his words.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah,
Ron Mayo, another one who you a referee who you remember, Kadiro Ron used to often say to me, "Don't talk to them, don't talk to them," which I found very difficult, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I found it very difficult. But at the end of the day, that's where the role of good captains.
Yeah.
Good captains, they control their players.
Yeah.
Now you've got people up in the stands with torches, flashing lights, and microphones, and people running on with messages and bits of paper and everything. It's a different sport now, Ali, really, isn't it?
And what about the danger, the concussion dangers? How difficult is that for referees to manage? Because you sort of being asked to be an instant medic, aren't you? A couple of heads clash. It can be very, very dangerous, very serious.
Incredibly dangerous. I think that's the biggest challenge the game's got at the moment, is the risk of injury, particularly head injuries, and that's going to be a challenging a challenge for a number of years to come, because none of us know the full extent of that. In terms of the game, I mean that's why I have to applaud the World Rugby for use of the bunker. But although I watch all the Bristol games, I'm out watching school games every week. I'm university tomorrow night. Local club games on a Saturday. The game's not played in the same way as it is at senior level. But it was a classic example, and I thought it was good common sense in the game, France and South Africa the weekend, where Estebet went to tackle someone. He's 6'9".
Yeah.
It's impossible. He tried as hard as he could to lower his body height, but he still clashed heads with the guy. And I thought they got that right by issuing him a yellow card, and he didn't get a red card. And I thought that was good common sense. But sometimes common sense is going out the window now. And that's another challenge as well for us. But yeah, it is a problem because less people are playing the game, Alastair.
Yeah.
My club used to run 5 sides. We're running 1 at the moment.
Yes, there are challenges. Optimists among us would say, well, we've always managed to get through challenges in the past, and rugby has lurched from a very stodgy game to a very exciting game, and we've managed things in the past. So my fingers are crossed in the future, and I know you're an optimist by heart, so I'm sure yours are too. But in the short term, rugby, we hope, will survive and flourish. But in the short term, we've got the World Cup. You get a quick prediction from you. The semi-finals this weekend and the final. Who do you think?
Well, I thought the Ireland-New Zealand game was one of the best games of rugby I can ever remember. 2 teams with a wanting to attack. The other games were slightly different. I thought France will be waking up thinking, how did we lose that from the position they were in? And I think they got a bit excited and carried away. I'd like England to win it, but if I wanted rugby to succeed, I'd want New Zealand to win it now. The New Zealand-Ireland game would have been would have been a wonderful final, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
A wonderful final. But I wouldn't write England off. I would not write them off. I think they got a bit between their teeth. They're not the prettiest sight to watch at the moment, but they're quite efficient, and especially, at the end of the day, Ali, as you well know, kickers win matches.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm afraid, Ed, we've got to call time on it because I've had such a lovely chat with you. Great catching up again, but unfortunately the clock is running away with us. So thank you so much for joining us, Ed, and wishing you all the best. And I hope to bump into you very soon.
Well, that's likewise, Ali, and thank you for your time. And sorry about the technical hiccup at the beginning. Well done, mate. Look after yourself, won't you?
So there we go, everybody. Ed Morrison, referee of the most famous World Cup final of all time, and predicting, maybe with his fingers crossed, that England might win it in a week on Saturday. Thanks very much for watching. See you again in a month or so's time.